LiSTNR production.
Hey, it's Helen Smith here with you for this special bonus episode of The Briefing. News of former One Direction star Liam Payne's death shocked the world when it broke 24 hours ago. The singer was found dead yesterday after a fall from a hotel's third floor in Argentina's capital, Buenos Aires. Payne's death was sudden and shocking to many fans. Vigils and group sing-alongs popped up all over the world in response, in a clear outpouring of grief, with One Direction's Instagram page posting for the first time in 4 years with a tribute to Liam.
He was such a large part of so many women's childhoods, girls who are now women's childhoods.
But alongside the grief came a flurry of increasingly invasive and personal questions about his death and the circumstances surrounding it. It's almost as though once a celebrity dies, the floodgates open up about their past, and people were quick to analyse his past comments on his battle with alcohol, serious allegations of abuse from a former partner, and what being a teenage heartthrob does to a person. It seemed as obvious as ever yesterday that when a celebrity dies, we have a different expectation of how we treat it. But where do we draw the line? And why do we have such strong reactions? Justin Hill is host of LiSTNR's The Streaming Service. Justin, why do we care so much about the death of a celebrity?
I think in this day and age, when we have so much access to celebrities, as someone who has grown up in eras where that's not been the case, and it is the case, I think these days we get an unprecedented look into their lives. You know, publicists around the world are continually having nightmares because they're like, celebrities themselves are making statements or posting things or taking videos from like private places that even 10, 20 years ago would never, ever happen. It was a very curated kind of like experience for a fan. These days, we can literally just open our phones and see what someone is eating for dinner who has millions of fans. And so I think these days we kind of feel like we have an ownership over them. We have a friendship with them that we've never had before. And so it's kind of that tricky space of where they're giving us a look into the intimate parts of their life, but also to trying to keep some privacy. But in doing that, they're kind of opening the doors, and it's like, how wide do you open them? And some celebrities have a really great control over that. It can come across as a little bit contrived sometimes, but I think there are other celebrities who just don't know how much or how far they should share their lives with fans, because it gets to a point where are they giving them a little bit too much?
Where's the line when it comes to privacy and, as you were just talking about, personal lives and celebrity deaths? Does the public deserve to know everything?
Is it okay to post a photo of yourself and a celebrity when they die? And I find that to be tacky. But in the same sense, it's also part of the grieving process. And I think it comes down to the intention behind it. If you are posting a photo of you and a celebrity because you worked with them, you spent some time with them, you genuinely were a really big fan, if they have some kind of like significance in your life, then I think that that's fine. But I also think that people who do it for clout, who are like leveraging off the fact that someone has died, I think they are forgetting that someone has died. And even though these people don't live normal lives, because I can categorically tell you they don't, like some of them are the most bizarre humans I've ever met, but they also are aware of that. They're aware that the world they're living in is just not normal. They don't get up and have to be at work at a particular time. They don't answer to anyone. They have a bunch of yes people around them who are going to say, what do you need? We'll make it happen. And that's just their team. Then they meet the public, and the public want to do that for them as well, or their fans. So they don't live normal lives and they don't function as regular human beings, but that all comes part and parcel of being a star. And then the relationship with the fans is that they then feel like, you know, that's a friendship that they have. And so I think in those instances, it is okay to do that. But yeah, those people that are chasing for clout, it just is really distasteful.
How much of this is the fault of the media, with some gossip sites you mentioned there before, with photos that might be unethically posted or released? Are they to blame, or do we need to take more personal responsibility as well before buying into the clickbait?
I think that there's a respect level. Like I said before, ultimately someone has died. You have to remember that. You have to treat it the same as if a family member had died, because for a lot of fans, this is just as important as, a family member or a friend passing away. If you have media who are not respecting that to get the clicks or to be the first people on it, I think sometimes they lose their filter. And there have been some media outlets who have posted some really distasteful photos of Liam after what happened. And, there have obviously been photos that have come out of his hotel room. And while they do give context to the situation and what happened, we just need to remember that there was a death and that Liam had a son. He's got a 7-year-old son. And you have to think about parents shielding their children from this news also in the media. I think not just his, immediate close family, but like the parents of the fans. Like, I would implore them to be looking for, online resources to figure out how to tell their children this, because it can be devastating for a lot of them. And what if they see something online that they didn't mean to see? And so I think there just needs to be a conscious effort to kind of treat it with a little bit of respect and at least, let the mourning process happen, let the facts come out, let his family and friends process it first before getting into the nitty-gritty details of what went down in what was obviously a very troubling time for someone.
The idea of what a celebrity owes us has been popping up recently, a lot with Chapel Roan in particular. Does the interest reflect an inherent sense of self-entitlement that we kind of have sometimes, that we assume that we deserve to know this sort of personal information because the person was a big celebrity? Or is this exactly what we mean when we say this is the cost of fame?
Yeah. So this is an interesting beast, because I feel like we've had a generation of artists who have had a curated presence in the world, and they're very conscious of not saying the wrong thing, not upsetting their fans, because they've been told by a manager or someone like that if you do that, that will be the end of your career and that will mean you get to stop doing the thing that you love. No one wants to do that. So they're very conscious of like what it is they say and how they respond to things. And sometimes it's silence. Chapel Roan is a brilliant case study because she gives 0 Fs about what people think. She is a young artist who is coming through. She has not been happy with the way that she's been treated and how her boundaries have been broken, and she has no issue saying that. Sabrina Carpenter, also a wonderful example of someone who is just putting boundaries in place. And those women and those people are learning that from, I guess, others, say like Taylor Swift, who may not be so vocal about, what they're saying, but definitely have had a career of experience to this point and have said, this would be a great way for you to approach that.
Some fans have been posting about their complex feelings around Liam following his many controversies and allegations of abuse. But they've also said that they're mourning this loss of part of their childhood and this nostalgia.
My heart physically hurts. I'm gonna cry. That's our whole childhood.
A piece of my childhood just is gone. It's gone.
It means the death of our teenage years. I haven't spoken with my friends for like 10 years, and yesterday we were all talking again, like we were 15 again.
I did not think I would have to even process a member of One Direction dying until I'm at least 60, and this is crazy. It's so sad. Oh my God.
What does this say about how our conversations change once a celebrity has died?
I think that we should never assume that we know everything about a celebrity, because you can be tricked into thinking that you do because of the access that we have. We don't know the dynamic of a relationship. We don't know who was right, who was wrong, who, if relationships break down and there are exes. I mean, not many people like their exes. They have ill feelings towards them, and that happens with celebrities too. Stories that you hear are not always the actual truth. You can look at that stuff, but try not to take it on and try to determine your own opinion of your experience with that person and how they made you feel, as opposed to being influenced by others. And I think it can be difficult sometimes, because if you have a lot of people, a lot of outlets trying to give you this narrative of how they want you to think about this person, especially after their death, they're not here to defend themselves, and that's not very fair. And I think that that's happened with a lot of celebrities. But if you want to feel that way about someone, then do that. But if you want to remember their legacy, then I would encourage you to do that instead.
Why do you think that happens? Why do you think when a celebrity dies, then the floodgates open up?
I think it comes down to, unfortunately, from a media perspective, wanting clicks and wanting to jump on that situation and make some kind of noise about it. And this obsession with presenting something to the public that no one else has. Because the problem is these days is we do get a lot of the same. And I always use this analogy of like when the Kardashians came to Australia a long time ago. Before they are like they are now. I feel like now they're a lot looser, they're a lot more in control of their narrative. But back then, they literally did a very select handful of interviews and it was the same interview over and over and over because their people around them wanted to have this control of the narrative of like what's being said. And so I think nowadays you've got people who are in control of their own narrative and what they're telling people, and it just presents a different opinion of what we think about someone and maybe one that's perhaps a little bit closer to the truth.
Do you think how we treat celebrities' deaths has gotten more or less respectful with social media?
Oh, that's a tricky question. I would probably say both because I feel like the amount of history and documentation and memories we have that have been uploaded to the internet, tiny pieces of, let's, use Liam for an example. When I was looking through at his career, you've got basically his whole life from that age of, 14 or something when he was on X Factor, from then onwards to the age of 31 has been documented in some way, shape or form. So there's a lot to draw on. You can easily go and find videos of him auditioning. The first tour with One Direction, when One Direction came to Australia. And I was looking through all those memories and being like, whoa, there's so much here for someone so young. You look at someone who has been a legend and in the industry for a very long time, and of course there's going to be a huge catalogue of interviews and things like that. But we've got dynamic, rich, deep content from someone who was super, super young. So I feel like in that sense, there's a lot for people to draw on. They have their own photos, they have concert photos, meet and greets, their favourite songs, all of that stuff that they can put into tributes. But then you've got that flip side of like media outlets and even, some people on social media. Some of the posts that I've seen on social media have been so distasteful because they're doing it to get a laugh. And I do think that that is a coping mechanism. I think when people feel an awkward situation where someone else is feeling quite emotional, they make a joke about it. Some people take it too far and they're just posting the most disgusting memes on social media already. And like, he's just died. So I think that in both instances, it has gotten better and worse.
Speaking of posts on social media, One Direction's official Instagram page posted for the first time in 4 years, doing a tribute, and then the former band members as well have all posted. What did you make of these posts?
I found this very interesting, and I think in this situation, it's what's not being said that's fascinating. We know that the boys split up. There were cultural moments when they formed, when they became huge international successes. Then when they split, and I guess this would probably also be a cultural moment in the One Direction history as well. The One Direction post was the first one. And I said the other day, I wouldn't be surprised if we don't hear from the other boys because they might feel like they can't say something about someone who is essentially their brother. Like it's very difficult to put it into words. The One Direction post from the band's page was written very specifically and it said, there's a lot more to be said, which we will get to in due time or something. But for now, we're just kind of like with our feelings. And it was very much, it kind of gave me the impression that they were obviously speaking on behalf of the band, of the boys, and that this would be the statement. But then what happened is we got personal statements from the boys as well. And I think Louis was the first one to post. And I do feel like once one band member had posted, that probably then triggered the others to post as well. And their statements are very heartfelt and very personal. They're not a statement on behalf of the band. I just thought it was very fascinating and very telling of what that dynamic is and about maybe how they feel about the band now from the boys' perspective, that yes, they were One Direction and they were mates and they had their issues, but so does everyone. Little Mix is another great example. But they're not One Direction, the brand. And I think the brand spoke on behalf of them and then they were like, no, we're going to say something ourselves, and their messages were quite different. They were very happy to put up lengthy, emotional, raw posts, whereas the band's page gave the impression that we wouldn't really say much more about it. This is our tribute. And then, you know what I mean? It's fascinating to see a band acting as a brand with this nameless person, but not really speaking on behalf of the actual boys. But then them going, no, I'm going to make a statement and I'm going to say something because I want to say my feelings. So it's just fascinating to see it work like that and see how the machine works. But also I guess it's great that they are taking ownership over their own voices and actually having their say.
You mentioned there that we have to treat like celebrities' deaths like any other person's death, but it's hard to do that sometimes when they are a celebrity. And as you said, they've fostered this relationship with their fans. They have this kind of transactional relationship as well. How does that work? Because fans aren't going to be going to his personal funeral. It's not like there is that personal relationship. Is this just part of being an international massive celebrity like One Direction was?
Yeah. It begs the question of who you're mourning here. Who are you saying goodbye to? Are you saying goodbye to the character of Liam Payne, international superstar, part of a boy band, one of the biggest boy bands in music history? Or are you farewelling and paying tribute to Liam Payne, who was the person who perhaps we may not have actually known? And I think there's a really important point that he has said previously, was that he wondered how low his rock bottom would be, but we would never see it because he was very good at hiding it. And it's also worth pointing out too, a lot of people may not know this, but Liam had actually filmed a lot of footage for a documentary special and was planning on releasing it because he wanted to tell his story. So he may have gotten to understand more about him. It actually was shelved because he needed to look after his health. That may come out post his death, but he obviously had more to tell us about who he was. So it does beg the question of who are you farewelling here? Because what happens with celebrities is they become a persona, they become a character. And that is how they actually handle being famous. Beyonce is Beyonce, but she also is Sasha Fierce. And Sasha Fierce was this at a time in her life where she needed to split who she was from being the person and the performer. She had to step into that role of being this like incredible, confident woman, which we know she is anyway. But she didn't believe that herself. She needed to have another persona to do. And I do feel like a lot of celebrities also do that. They step into a character and they become the person that their fans want them to be, which is not always who they actually are. So I think whatever resonates with you is the person that you should be farewelling. But also understand that there are many, many, many layers to these people, probably more than the average person, because they deal with stuff that we would never dream of dealing with. And I mean, I do really hope that we get to find out more about Liam's story.
Justin, thanks for joining us on The Briefing.
Pleasure.
Justin Hill there, and this is definitely not the last we'll hear about this story, but I think he made a great point of sitting with this story and actually reflecting on how you feel personally is probably one of the best things you can do before you're posting about it online. That's it for this bonus episode of The Briefing. We'd love it if you could share this ep with someone else you think might enjoy it. If you want to keep up with our other content, you can check us out on Instagram at The Briefing Podcast and on TikTok and YouTube. Just search for Listener Newsroom, and we'll be back in your feed later today at 3 p.m. But that's not it for this week. On Saturday, Antoinette Lattouf is back in your ears, bringing you this amazing chat with Sharon Johal. She talks about everything from her experience on Neighbours and on The Block as well, to her most recent project on The 12, which she said was the best production she's ever worked on.
We've never, ever, ever seen this before, a woman wearing a turban on Australian television screen. And for all of those kids that are growing up being that religious or the community, I have to do it. This opportunity has come to me for a reason and I have to do it.
And remember, subscribing to The Briefing wherever you get your pods means new eps will land in your feed as soon as they're published and you'll be the first to hear. I'm Helen Smith. Speak to you soon.